Okay, well, we're going to get started on time here so that we can move through our program and be, I think, aware of everyone's time and not hold people up any longer than necessary to cover the topic that we have this evening on Sojourner Truth and the statue and project that's going to be coming to Akron here in the near term. My name is Jim Gartner. I'm the moderator here at First Church, and also attending here should be Sue Yoder, who is our vice moderator as well. And I just wanted to welcome everyone. We're hoping to try and wrap this all up by 8:45, so we're going to try and stay on time with that. For those folks that do have questions, though, as the presentation is going on this evening, please use the chat function, which is at the bottom of your screen, and you should be able to click on that and be able to type in your questions or comments, and we'll be able to pick up those questions during the Q&A, which will be at the end of the program. Okay, and let's see. You can post your questions at any time throughout the program, but like I say, we will continue to monitor that, pick up those questions. So with that, then I would like to turn it over briefly here to Sue for an opening prayer to get started.
Let us pray. Dear loving God, thank you for bringing us together this evening to learn about the Sojourner Truth Project that will memorialize an inspirational, courageous woman here in Akron. We are in awe of her accomplishments and know she is so deserving of the honor to be discussed tonight. Thank you for the guests who are with us, who will inform us about the project and how we at First Church can be involved. Thank you for church members and friends who are in attendance. Help us to listen closely and keep our ears and minds open as we come to understand that Sojourner Truth's vision came from you, Lord. And as our church's vision comes from you, God, also, we realize that her vision and our vision are really one and the same. Help and guide us so that we may follow in her footsteps and live out our lives with our faith in action. Remind us that we need to speak the truth every day of our lives as she did. Give us the courage to speak up as she did. And give us the courage to speak up, especially when it's difficult during these times that are so full of division. Also, help us to speak up for those who are voiceless or are not being heard. Lord, it is often too easy to neglect to show caring and love for others. Remind us that it is your will and that we can make a difference in our community and the world. Sojourner Truth had tremendous faith in you. May we be reminded of her faith as she worked for more equality among all people. Guide us every day so we can live out our faith and our words and actions are always driven by your love. In the word Sojourner Truth was known to say, God, you drive. So we ask that you drive our gathering tonight and always. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. And now I'd like to invite Margaret Maurer, who is a member of our church and who is chair of the education committee of the Sojourner Truth Project, to introduce our guests.
Thank you so much, Sue. What a lovely prayer. I really appreciate the beautiful message you shared with us today. Hello, everybody. I am here to introduce my colleagues from the Sojourner Truth Project Akron. We are deeply honored to be invited to give today's presentation to you. We are part of a team that is working to memorialize Sojourner Truth's Ain't I a Woman speech given here in Akron in 1851. This group is working to install a statue of Sojourner Truth in what will become Truth Plaza on North High Street next to where she spoke. Why is the creation of this monument so important? Well, I'm a primary example of why. I grew up in Northeastern Ohio, yet it was only recently that I even knew about this historic event. I knew about the speech, but not that it happened here. I never owned it as my heritage. Sojourner Truth was a Christian preacher on a mission from God to speak to as many people she could about creating an equitable society where race, class, and gender were all embraced and celebrated. She spoke to support voting rights for all women, including women of color. My values are her values, and I suspect many of yours. Once created, our new monument will communicate these values to generations to come. Members of our church have a long history of aligning with Sojourner Truth's values. For example, in the 19th century, the Spellman family were members of this congregation. They were also longtime activists in the anti-slavery movement. Their son-in-law, John D. Rockefeller, helped found Spelman College, named in honor of Rockefeller's wife, Laura Spelman Rockefeller. First Congregational church members were probably also suffragists marching proudly for women's rights. Approving this resolution will allow our historic congregation to make a statement about and live into our own values. It will also enable Akron to honor our past while shaping our future. And now I will introduce Tawanda Mullins, Chair, Sojourner Truth Project, Akron. Tawanda.
Thank you, Margaret. This evening, I'm going to speak to you as to why the Sojourner Truth Project Akron is so important. Sojourner Truth was a brave example of leadership in the women's suffrage and civil rights movement of the 19th century. Although born into slavery, she transformed herself into Sojourner Truth, traveling America as an itinerant preacher, advocating for abolitionism, women's rights, women's suffrage, temperance, and denouncing slavery. In May 1851, Sojourner Truth spoke here in Akron at the Women's Rights Convention. She was not invited, but attended anyway. She was asked not to speak, but rose to advocate for all women's rights, including women of color. Her speech challenged the exclusion of women of color from the women's movement, allowing Akron to play an extraordinary role in the fight for voting rights for all women. On behalf of the Summit Suffrage Centennial Committee, welcome to today's updates. It all started with the Summit Suffrage Centennial Committee, which was convened to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. We strive to educate the public on the progress made over the last 100 years, honor the fight for voting rights for all women, especially women of color who were excluded from voting rights until the 1960s. To help our community reflect on today's voting challenges and the future equity for all women. We hope to bring everyone up to speed on how we got started, the progress we made, and how you can help take us to the next level. Next slide. In 2018, various organizations were planning events to ensure that the 100th anniversary of the women's right to vote, August 2020, and the history of the suffrage movement were recognized throughout our community. Those efforts brought us together, and we acknowledged the prior endeavors to establish a Sojourner Truth statue in Akron. As our discussions continue, it became clear that this was a project that we all agreed upon, and she should be honored, both as a significant event in Akron's history and that of the national women's suffrage movement itself. Through regular meetings and fluid discussions, we settled on 3 core committees to focus our energies. The Truth Committee focused on the statue. Their exploration was about the feasibility, of creating, locating, funding the Sojourner Truth Statute itself. Then the Education Committee, they focused their awareness to bring the suffrage movement to you, to share the importance of what happened here with Sojourner Truth in Akron. Then we have our Communications Committee. And this group of talented individuals will promote activities like today to engage our community. Everything was moving right along, and then came COVID-19. But our core committee chairs were undeterred. We continue with biweekly meetings over the last 3 years, and we're excited to share the progress we've made. Now, I'd like to introduce you to the core committee leaders of this team. Eileen Shapiro, Summit County Executive. Tawanda Mullins, myself, First Vice President of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Akron Alumni Chapter. Teresa Carter, Fundraising, President of Synthomer Foundation. Jackie Darrow, Communications, Past President, League of Women Voters of Akron. Leanne Neff Hepner, Project Historian, CEO of Summit County Historical Society. Pamela Hickson Stevenson, Communications, Executive Director, Akron Summit County Public Library. Lisa King, Fundraising, Executive Director of Summit Metro Parks. Margaret Maurer, Education, Co-Chair of Women's Interfaith Spiritual Heritage, also known as WISH. Next slide. The John S. Knight Foundation became an early supporter. They connected our project to experts at the National Trust for Historic Preservation's African American Cultural Heritage Fund. And they are underwriting the trust, technical assistance, and consultations. Through this relationship, the Sojourner Truth Project has become a national, that's right, national demonstration project on how to tell the Black experience in America, the full American story. Trust experts from across the country are consulting with our core committees to design and educate and impact this site for future visitors. Now you'll hear from Leanne Neff Hepner. Thank you. Next slide.
Good evening. First, let's talk a little bit about the history. The photograph in the center is that of Sojourner Truth. She was born in 1797 as Isabella Baumfree, a slave in Dutch-speaking Ulster County, New York. Her early years were hard. She was bought and sold 4 times and subjected to harsh physical labor and violent punishment. She had to watch helplessly as her brothers, her sisters, and even her own children were taken from her and sold. In 1843, Isabella had a religious conversion that led her to change her name to Sojourner Truth. Thus began her mission to speak to as many people as she could about creating an equitable society where race, class, and gender were all embraced and celebrated. Next slide, please. In May of 1851, as Tawanda mentioned, Truth came to Akron to attend the Second Ohio Women's Rights Convention. The convention took place in the Universalist Old Stone Church, pictured here on the right. There actually are no photographs of this structure, only a line drawing in Samuel Lane's 90 Years and Over. Sojourner Truth came to Akron to sell her autobiography in the hopes to one day own her own home. And when Sojourner Truth was compelled to speak, this became known as the most famous women's rights and abolitionist speech in the world. Sojourner Truth was not invited to the convention, but she attended anyway, and she was not asked to speak, but she could not contain herself, and she rose up to represent the women's rights, even women of color, which many people at that time were not allowing to be part of the movement. Now, there are 2 versions of Sojourner Truth's speech. One was printed in the Salem, Ohio Anti-Slavery Bugle shortly after the event, and the other one was printed 12 years later. But regardless, the speech electrified the event and the people and the women's rights movement for decades to come, even up until today. And we need your help to share that story of Sojourner Truth, that she was here in Akron in Northeast Ohio, and that she has a national and international influence. Next slide, please. Part of the project was to consider where the statue should be placed, and a committee was formed and a survey was made to consider a variety of sites around Akron. This survey helped us to focus on determining which site would be best and most appropriate for the significance of Sojourner Truth in her words. Based on the survey results, it was clear that the statue should be as close as possible to the location of the old Universalist stone church. And that was very close to the United Way building in downtown Akron on High Street. Once the United Way of Summit and Medina County leadership was briefed on the project, they embraced the opportunity to partner with our committee wholeheartedly. And plans for the proposed plaza and statue installation were announced even at the United Way 2021 annual meeting, and then reintroduced with some exciting photographs that you're going to see today for their 2022 annual meeting, which we were able to attend. Prior to the United Way occupying the building, it historically housed the income maintenance offices and the Job and Family Services Department of Summit County government. And in 1991, the building was dedicated as a Sojourner Truth building here in Akron. Next slide, please. Now we have two historic maps. On the left, this is an 1860s atlas, and the Universalist Church is in a red square. And for those of you that are looking at that intently, it says Baptist Church, and that's because a few years after the Women's Rights Convention was held there, the Universalist Church was no longer able to house their congregation at that structure, and they sold it to the Baptist Church. On your right is a view of an overview of overhead of that same location, and that site where the church was located again is in red. And then to the south of that on your screen is where the statue plaza is going to be located. We are so excited to be able to share with you this evening the developments that have come about with all the different committee members that have brought us to the point where we are today. And so please let me introduce to you Lisa King to learn more.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a concept for the proposed Truth Plaza, and it may even evolve into something that is instead called Truth Park. But in any case, this is designed by Summit Metro Parks landscape architect Dion Harris. Dion is working as a volunteer and has been working hand in hand with the National Trust for Historic Preservation's African American Cultural Heritage Fund consultants. And they are working to optimize the opportunity for interpretation. And there's such wonderful interpretive content here. Following a number of reviews and iterations, this design is now at about 90% complete, and we are beginning to share it publicly. And you are getting a first peek at this because we really haven't gotten it out in the public, per se yet. So you're getting to see this. This rendering gives you a good idea, of the spatial arrangement. The completed plaza will commemorate the legacy, obviously, of Sojourner Truth, with faithful adherence to the available history. It'll not only elevate and focus on the statue itself, but the details embedded in the plaza will be rich with historical symbolism and will interpret her inspiring life and, of course, her amazing impact. The design envisions seating and lighting throughout the plaza. The interpretive highlights will include visual and auditory elements that are yet to be designed. It's highlighting Truth's famous speech as well. It is our intention to create a gathering space for students and a stirring destination for downtown visitors as it marks the northern entrance to the city along North High Street. Next slide, please. Shown here are preliminary 3D renderings that helped the design team make further design decisions as they moved along, such as retaining walls needed lowered, so the focus was more on the statue. And from different views, they made some adjustments to, what you would see and what the background would be. Let's see, sorry about that. They show the statue as the focus, which I mentioned, and all the features radiate from the statue. The 4 columns that are shown here represent the 4 columns that were part of the church design where she gave her speech. Our goal is to interpret her journey and work in many inspiring ways that she has affected people with this plaza. Next slide, please. Here are the inspiration photos for the plaza's detailing, and it includes the curvilinear benches that attach to the shorter planter walls or retaining walls. The little inset there of the footprints in the pavement. We feel that this would be a very interesting way to call attention to her story because it was such a journey. And the signage made from various natural metals that reduce future maintenance while creating bold, eye-catching statements. So this is going to look familiar to you as I grabbed that as my background for tonight. I'd like to turn it over now to Margaret. Next slide, please.
Let me start by saying that cities decide which stories they tell about themselves. Here in Akron, we talk a lot about John Brown and our beloved rubber workers. Why haven't we told the story of Sojourner Truth? Why don't we all know from our school days that she was here, that she spoke, and how important her message is? We can build the most amazing monument, and if the citizens of Summit County and Akron don't share the story of Sojourner Truth, we have missed out on a very important part. That is the work of the education team for this project. Representatives from the education team have been working for the past year to develop materials to educate all of us about Sojourner Truth and her message. These materials are all available for public use, hosted by Summit County Executive Eileen Shapiro's office. The web portal feature here has resources for educators and community members alike. This slide gives you a QR code, and the web link is printed at the bottom of the screen. In addition to other materials, the Resources for Educators tab accesses curated educational resources on Sojourner Truth and the women's suffrage movement. This extensive collection was compiled as part of our partnership with the Akron Public Schools Teaching and Learning Department. Book lists and resources were curated by the Akron Summit County Public Library. Thanks to Akron Public Schools, these resources will be shared with and contributed to by all Summit County schools, public, charter, and faith-based, as well as the general public. Our core committee has also created a 16-minute video on Sojourner Truth's life and impact in Akron. Sojourner Truth, Our History is available via this resources page. Watch for announcements also about our video premiere. We also have print informational materials to share. Next slide, please. Our goal is to spread news about the project widely by offering presentations and programs like this one today. If you know of an organization that would welcome us, please contact us via email at truth.2020.statue@gmail.com. Here you see 2 of our committee members, Tawanda Mullins and Jackie Darrow, with APS scholars at the Plaza location site, learning more about the project. This speaking engagement with the students, Summit County Public Library staff, and APS teachers was a teachable moment as we were able to educate them on who Sojourner Truth was, why she was here, and walk them through the architectural design layout. Most recently, we have begun a project with Akron Public Schools STEM Middle School to ask 8th grade students what they think should be included in the future monument experience. It is imperative that we honor our past by shaping our future, and these kids are our future. Lisa King will now continue our conversation. Next slide, please.
Here we go. Some of you may have known Faye Hirsch Dambrot, who was a force for elevating women in Akron. During her life, she worked individually and collaboratively to spearhead enduring programs, including the Akron University Women's Studies Program, the Women's History Project, and the Women's Network here in Akron. Her final project before her death in 2002 was to commemorate Sojourner Truth's historic Akron speech by erecting a statue of her image. Through her efforts, Akron artist Woodrow Nash was engaged to complete a prototype statue, a prototype that sat on a shelf when the project was abandoned. Fast forward 20 years, our project committee dedicated that instead of pursuing a design competition for the statue, that we would look within our own community for an artist. Woodrow Nash was known internationally, and his artistic pedigree had grown significantly over those years. The decision to re-engage him in this project was an easy one. Woodrow Nash was born in Akron in the late 1940s, and as his website states, he works in the tradition of the great masters to build a sense of mystery and charisma into each of his sculptures. Today, Woodrow Nash's work is collected all over the world. His collectors' demographics have no racial boundaries and include everyone from working professionals to affluent sports figures and entertainment superstars. Pictured on the left are County Executive Shapiro with committee members Edna Borders, Teresa Carter, and Tawanda Mullins, along with Woodrow and the statue prototype. Next slide, please. Fundraising efforts have gone well so far, with the Akron Community Foundation acting as our fiscal agent. The United Way has become a primary partner in the project and is undertaking their own fundraising effort for the plaza as well. That was once a project focused just on a statue. It has now grown into the creation of Truth Plaza. The growth has increased the budget, as you would imagine, from $400,000 to just over $1.3 million. To date, we have raised over $650,000, which is very impressive for a project of this type. Word is getting out and the community is embracing the project, and we love that. All women have benefited from our courageous foremothers like Sojourner Truth. The Sojourner Truth statue and plaza is our chance to remind future generations of the hard-fought work on the road to gaining the most fundamental right of citizenship, the right to vote. Next slide, please. For those that are willing to donate or wish to donate, you can do so by visiting the Akron Community Foundation's website. It looks like this. You click on that giving tab and select the Sojourner Truth Project-Akron Fund. To date, the committee has worked very hard with fundraising as the project evolves. Every donation will be commemorated on our website from $1 on up. Those individuals and organizations donating $25,000 or more will be memorialized, permanently recognized permanently on the site. And now I'll turn it over to Tawanda. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Lisa. Before we end, we just want to make sure that you have our social media handles. So if you could follow us at Sojourner Akron, that's our Facebook account. At Sojourner Truth Project Akron, that's our Twitter account. And if you're planning an event or donor drive, we would be more than happy to align with your efforts. Just reach us at truth.2020.statue@gmail.com. Next slide. Thank you again for sharing your space with us. And at this time, we welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Tawanda. I'd like to thank all of the guest presenters at this time, not only Tawanda, but Leanne, Lisa, and Margaret as well for the fine presentation on the Sojourner project. Thank you for taking your time here this evening to speak to our church members. You have this opportunity, if you would like, that you may stay or leave at this particular point in time of the presentation. And you're welcome to stay, or if you've got other things going on this evening, you may do that. What we'd like to do now is we're going to share an explanation from our chair of our Stewardship and Finance Board about how we might possibly finance the sponsorship, and a word also from our senior minister, Nanette Pitt.
Hi, good evening. I'm Kevin Kowalski, and I'm currently the chair of the Stewardship and Finance Board. I wanted to share with you an overview of where the funds to support both the World Central Kitchen and the Sojourner Truth Project will come from. As Jim has communicated, First Church has had several very successful years recently. With consistent giving and with strong gains in the stock market, our investments have grown significantly, producing higher dividends and interest payments from our endowment fund, which has a current balance of over $15 million. And due to the effects of COVID, many of our routine expenses were decreased or eliminated during the periods where our facility was closed. Together, these factors have caused us to have successful fiscal years with positive financial returns. If a fiscal year ends with a positive bottom line, that gain goes into the unrestricted operating fund and is carried over to the next year. Currently, First Church has accumulated an unrestricted operating fund of $817,450. Historically, the Stewardship and Finance Board has made it a practice to maintain a 3-month emergency expense reserve, which currently calculates out to be $257,278. In the pie chart, the whole pie is the unrestricted operating fund of $817,450. And the green portion is the 3-month emergency expense we hold in reserve. That leaves the blue and yellow portions of $560,173 to put towards other needs of the church or the community. In the coming fiscal year, we anticipate work to replace the church's boilers. So the Stewardship and Finance Board has recommended, and the governing board approved, a $335,000 commitment from the unrestricted operating fund to pay for these necessary repairs. That is the blue portion of the pie graph. If the total sum is spent on those repairs, that will leave $225,173, the yellow portion of the pie graph, remaining in the unrestricted operating fund. It would be from this remaining money that First Church would draw the funds to support both World Central Kitchen and the Sojourner Truth Project. Thank you.
Thank you to our presenters and guests this evening, Tawanda, Leanne, Lisa, and Margaret. And thank you all for being here. I am sorry that I'm not able to be with you in person. Because of that, I wanted to take a moment to record these quick reflections from a pastoral perspective. Money is just one of the resources we have. And First Church is blessed in this regard, as in others, to have a faithful congregation, strong lay leaders, and a blessed past that brings us boldly to this present moment. A few years ago, our leadership began prioritizing capital improvements in our facility and shared life. The pandemic gave us the opportunity to speed up many of these projects and bring them to fruition. These capital improvements help us realize one of our 3 vision priorities: congregational life. They will be an asset to and support the vitality of our congregation and all of the many groups and partners who share our space for years to come. These capital improvement projects total around $520,000, and they include the ADA restrooms, air conditioning in the upper room and fellowship hall, in the office and educational building, in the food pantry and the parish house building, new doors in the vestibule, the elevator lobby, and the parish house, all of the live streaming equipment and the audiovisual updates, the installation of the hearing assistance device T-coil system, and the renovation of the garden, the main office suite, fellowship hall, and the main hallway. And does also include new equipment in the food pantry and in the church's commercial kitchen. Now, when a household of faith like First Church takes on a large capital project or many smaller ones like we have, it is often the practice that they will take a percentage of that money and dedicate it outwardly to missions that are not about the us, but rather are a tithe or an offering solely to benefit others. It's a model of the way we give individually as members of the church, just us as a whole, giving as a member of the world. I see the proposed $50,000 as a responsible and generous percentage of the $520,000 we have dedicated, and I applaud members of the congregation and our leadership for considering support of World Central Kitchen and the Sojourner Truth Project. And I appreciate that these projects speak directly to our two other vision priorities, food justice and community development. I'd like to leave you with one last reflection. Here at First Church, we have long cherished our ties to abolition and the Underground Railroad, to civil rights and social justice. These historic facts are not clear to us entirely. They're often only pieces of a story clouded by the passage of time. Supporting the Sojourner Truth Project allows First Church to make a public statement now and for all time about our past, our present values, and the future we are praying and working for. Our tagline says it all, that we are rooted in Christ, fostering justice and celebrating diversity. Amen, and thank you.
Okay, we've completed now the program portion of this this evening. What Sue and I would like now is if there are any questions for the panelists who are still with us here this evening, or for Sue or I, we'll be glad to take those at this particular time. Please use the chat function at the bottom of your screen and go ahead and type your questions in. And we appreciate everyone for their time and their energy this evening. The first question that I see is, will First Church be hosting a donation drive? And at this particular point in time, we have not made any, our governing board has not made any decision in regards to that. We do have an issue before the congregation at the upcoming semi-annual meeting in regards to a one-time donation as a presenting sponsor to the Sojourner Truth Project, and that will be up for a congregational vote. The governing board had approved that we should support this project, but we wanted to bring it to the congregation for their approval as well. I would be interested to know what other organizations have donated to this project. So if one of the committee folks could answer that question, that would be great.
I most certainly can answer that. If you want to give me a moment while I put my hands on the list. If there's another question, go right ahead and jump over me for a moment.
And thank you, Lisa. I was just about to pull up the list.
Yep.
While she's doing that, just realize that the list is long. We have quite a few donors at this level and up. So you definitely will not be the first at this level, but we again welcome your organization at whatever level you see deemed appropriate to help us with this cause. But she'll pull that up, and as you will see in a moment here, we have a long list.
And Tawanda or Lisa or Margaret even, I think our members and friends who are in attendance would be interested to know what the $25,000 donation, what First Church will get for that. It's a really cool thing, I think. So would somebody explain that? Because I don't think I can really explain it the way you can.
Absolutely. Let's see. We do this quickly here. I want to sort.
I'll get started while Lisa's
Sure.
finding that. So permanent recognition, that's so important. Your name will be there forever. We planning on future maintenance of the plaza, but your organization will be there forever. Also recognition on the website, and then a mini sculptor. How about that? A mini sculptor of that prototype. You saw that in the slide deck with the internationally known artist, Mr. Nash. So you'll get actually one of those mini statues. And then you'll get 2 Sojourner Truth pens. So we're going to have these pens created, and you'll also be afforded 2 pens.
That's right. All right. Thank you, Tawanda. I'm glad you had that handy. I would like to just scroll down the list for a moment, and
Yes.
I will get you to where you that question, get you an answer to your question. All right. The Synthomer Foundation is at the 25,000 level. We have, let's see, the Glenn and Karen Lepo Family Fund is at the $25,000 level. The Knight Foundation is at that level as well, including the bringing in the consultants from the National Trust. Let's see. Summit County has given at that level, Summit County government, pardon me, as well as Children's Hospital Foundation, the Dominion Energy Charitable Trust. Let's see, Huntington Bank, First Energy Foundation. Let's see, that's the Knight Foundation. The Burton D. Morgan Foundation as well. And so that was the last one at the $25,000 level.
We had a question from our audience. What is the total cost of the project, of the amount total funds that you're trying to raise toward this project?
So if we, I don't know that we said clearly how this is working. The statute itself is the funds that we are currently raising. The plaza funds are being raised by United Way. So all total, the statute plus the plaza is around $1.3 million. But we are at the point currently where they are now working through a more detailed estimate. So of course, our goal is to stay very close to that. Because there will be unknowns, which you always find when you start digging, and being, getting a parking lot to work with, which was such a blessing. And we're so excited about the space. Of course, when they built the parking lot, there are utilities that run under there, and they're all ones we will want to move and situate in a better place, the electric and the stormwater for sure. So we want to be able to have some wiggle room for those unknowns that we find. But just to circle back to your answer is about $1.3 million.
Very good.
And Twanda and I have a fantasy that, and I'm not sure it's a fantasy, I think it's going to happen. I have faith that if we get to the end of the project and the money is available, we want to establish scholarship funds for Akron Public School students. Did you want to speak to that at all, Twanda?
I mean, that
Or
was
is that-
perfect, Margaret. I mean, we're just hoping that, at the end of this project, I hate to say the end because I don't think it will ever end, as far as being a place, destination, not the project in itself, but the empowerment will last. The place of peace will be forever. So I don't like to say the end, but when we do get everything into fruition, yes, how about that? Having those extended funds be granted toward the scholars that are going to matriculate in these communities. So that is one of the, we want to keep that, in the forefront of what we do at the conclusion, after everything has settled, that why wouldn't we begin a scholarship foundation?
We had another question from the audience. What is your estimated completion date for the statue and plaza?
As you can imagine, when we went from just a statue to a statue and plaza, the timeline, we started from scratch with the timeline. We were hoping to have, when we were thinking very small about where do we put a statue, we were hoping to be done by the end of this year, but, thinking small is not appropriate for this. And when we brought in the National Trust and we realized, that the United Way had let us know that they would give us the parking lot as space we could use, we started from the point of when we have a plan that can go from an estimate to an engineer's estimate, which means there's real numbers put to real materials and things like that. We would count from there. So what I can tell you is that our goal is to be done by the end of fall next year. So the one thing that we do know is that Woodrow is moving along well with the statue. He did have a hiccup with supply chain, like so many people. He did get his materials. We do understand and that things are moving along. So we worried that maybe the plaza would be done before the statue or vice versa. And it looks like it may dovetail just fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Another question that was asked as it related to folks that have already made donations to the project. Are there any other faith communities that have made a commitment?
I think that we have had a handful of $5,000 or less commitments, but I know that there's still many conversations going on. So I think that this is going to be very robust, continuing through the summer and through the fall. So we continue to just, we have inspiration, we're inspired, and we're going to continue on.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. I'm not seeing any additional questions. Sue, is there any other questions maybe I missed?
No, I don't see any. I think we got them all.
All right. Well, please also remember that in the chat function, there were several websites that were mentioned and or links to other sites that are related to the Sojourner Truth Project and this whole concept and idea. So please, I hope you jotted some of those down. I'm sure we'll be able to get this information to you, or you can, I think because this is being recorded, you should be able to get these links and information through the main office. Yes, Margaret, something?
Jim, there is one other question from Michael
Yeah.
Howard in the chat.
Sure, go right ahead. Where is he?
Well, the question's in the chat. It
says there are many public trails and local spaces that help tell a fuller and more inclusive history of Akron. The end of High Street is a common area for traffic and visibility. Great location. Both the Freedom Trail, the Matthews Hotel Monument, and the future development of the Innerbelt are all close in proximity. Are there any discussions about connecting them more intentionally?
Yes, there absolutely are. That's a great question and a great insight. The one thing that this committee and the larger committee does with grace and ease is that connections and asking questions, and all of our partners on this, and not always partnering in a financial way, but partnering in connection to the right person and helping you fill out forms and all those things. So yes, there are discussions with the city of Akron as they are looking at what that Innerbelt's going to be. There are other cool connections too that we are starting to talk about right now. And the one thing that we, there's so much going on, it was impossible to get it all in one presentation. But because of our connection with the National Trust, which Tawanda talked about, they are going to use this project as sort of a prototype to build a toolkit on how other cities can build these historic monuments specifically to Black leaders, I believe. And we're very humbled by the fact that they even want to see how this has progressed and try to package it for others to be able to use the same similar processes. So one thing that the National Trust will do for us as well is add our site to their list of recommended destinations when this is complete. So we will be part of their network, which should draw some people to Akron to come and enjoy this site.
And I was going to mention also, we said that the National Trust Cultural Heritage for African American Congregate came to Akron at the same time. The representative from California that's working with the city of Akron for the Innerbelt came, and we decided to introduce them. And as soon as they saw each other, they knew each other. So we have individuals from Washington, D.C. to the state of California working on this project. And so we're really excited how it's going to tie in, not just locally and on a state level, but nationally as well, as Lisa mentioned.
Very good. That's wonderful. I think that there's been so many different types of activities and programs and other things from people of color over a long period of time that have been overlooked or haven't had the kind of maybe rigorous writing and brought to our national attention. And I think that anything we can do to move in that direction, I think is a good thing. Any additional questions from our audience? No, I don't see any other additional questions at this point. At this time, I think if there are no further questions, then I would say we've got a wonderful program here this evening. And again, this program is being recorded. People would be able to hear it again.
This one? No. Over here. Oh.
Okay.
Thank you all. It's a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
It is. Thank you very much for attending.
Thanks.
Want to have a great evening. Thank you.
Don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions.
Will do. Great. Thank you, Margaret.
And thank you to Wanda, Lisa, and Leanne, and Margaret for coming. You were very informative. And
Thank you.
Thank you. It was
Have
our
a good
pleasure.
night.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having
Good
us.
night. Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That means Karen.
Okay. Well, Bobby, I think we're all set here for this evening, so I think we can